as you can imagine, Bears fans are very excited about Caleb Williams, and he did wonderfully in his first preseason game, in our opinion. From your learned eye, what did you see?
Whenever we talk about preseason, I think it's important to keep perspective, but Caleb's debut just felt a little bit different, right? I mean, all the weight of being the number one pick overall, all the talk in the offseason, the Justin Fields discourse among the fans and what they should do at quarterback. It just felt like there was a lot of pressure. And Williams, he passed with his first test. Is this just the first test? But he passed it with flying colors. So many plays that you can take away. And honestly, I don't even know what the stats were. I know they were good. Those don't matter. It's watching each play, each snap to see how he performs, how he executes, and just to see if the moment's too big for him. And I think he looked like he belonged right away. And that naked keeper to his right was just a thing of beauty. First, the ball handling, the footwork on that play action, the mobility to run full speed to his right, eyes downfield, the flats taken away. So, okay, there's Cole Kmet open in the corner route, not having to stop, load up, set, just nothing. He has the velocity in his arm, the body balance where he can fire a seed full stride. It just really, a play like that illustrates what separated him as a prospect and why I think he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback. It's the mobility, the poise, the arm, and the way all three of those things are connected. It's really impressive to watch. And so that's why I think this season we're going to see a lot of boot concepts, designed movements as part of this offense because you want Caleb to showcase that mobility, the playmaking instincts. That's what makes him special. And so you want to showcase that. So I think we can expect plenty of movement this year from Shane Waldron as he takes over this offense.
So, how do you watch some of the early returns on these guys that you spent so many hours putting into the proper order? And you have to make all of those difficult decisions. And with everybody that you talk to, how much do you second guess, and how much do you say, oh well, I hope this guy's better than this guy, and I'm right about this and right about that, or do you have to completely just let that go once the beast comes out?
Yeah, I don't get too hung up on that because, you trust the process, you trust your scouting, and then, I think you have to come to grips that where a player is drafted very much determines how they are developed and what kind of player they turn into. And, there are times where on draft night, if I'm, going back and forth between, do I like player A or player B better? And then I decide, okay, I'm going to rank player A higher, but then player B goes to a better situation on draft night. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? He's going to have a better NFL career because of the situation he's going to. All of that stuff matters. And especially at certain positions, your supporting cast, whether that's the coaching, whether, if you're a quarterback, what your offensive line look like, what your receivers look like. So I try not to get too caught up in specific rankings because I can explain why I have this or that. Now, how things play out, how players are developed, that's certainly something very different. But it is interesting when you watch these guys in preseason, the different trajectories these guys are on. Caleb Williams is ready from day one. He's going to hit the ground running. There'll be mistakes along the way, but he is the guy. Whereas with some of these other quarterbacks, say Drake May, for example, it will be more of a learning process. He wasn't as far along as Caleb was in his development, and he's going to a Patriots offense where you have a brand new coaching staff. You have probably one of the worst wide receiver groups in the league. Offensive line is in flux. So, these situations are all very different, and that context is so important.
I'm glad that you brought that up because Dan and I were having a conversation about the rookies this past weekend, and one of the guys that I brought up I think is such an interesting case to evaluate. And that's the guy that Caleb Williams replaced at Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler, who I think kind of quietly he developed a lot more than maybe people expected his senior year at South Carolina. I'd love to know what you think about him as far as like a nature versus nurture thing and whether he has an opportunity to win that job in New Orleans at some point.
He certainly has the ability. The way the ball comes off his hand, he's tough. And watching him at South Carolina last year, one of the craziest stats that's in the beast was he played behind an offensive line that had 10 different combinations throughout 12 games. So their starting five was
Jeez.
different in 10 of the 12 games. And it's hard to, especially in the SEC, it's hard to find any rhythm or timing when you're constantly running for your life. And that's what it was last year in that South Carolina offense. But it was a good way to prepare him for what he's going to see day in, day out in the NFL, where that pass rush is constant and it is unrelenting. So I think that he has the toughness, the mental toughness, and just the pure ability to do it. Now it's all about the development and can he do what's required. I think the biggest thing with quarterbacks is timing, especially these rookies. NFL speed is very different than college speed. I don't care if you played in the SEC or not. And this goes for any rookie quarterback, Caleb, Spencer Rattler, all these guys. How quickly can you get up to speed to make sure you're playing on schedule? The other part of it is just having the mental toughness to battle through those inevitable mistakes. They're going to happen while you're learning. And, like Peyton Manning, go back to his rookie year. He had 28 interceptions, but those mistakes didn't bury him because he had the mental toughness. You look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, another Oklahoma quarterback. He had a ton of mistakes his first few years in the league. The Eagles were gearing up to draft another quarterback until Jalen had that third year in the league where everything started to click. But it was his mental toughness. That's what separated him because it allowed him to stay focused and ready to learn, even though he had to persevere with some low times. And so that's the biggest thing. And not to put another quarterback down, but a guy like Zach Wilson, the lack of confidence that he shows on the field. I think that's the biggest reason why he has struggled to live up to where he was drafted. So a guy like Spencer Rattler, a guy like Caleb, if you try to gauge their mental toughness to overcome those negative plays, that to me is the biggest barometer of, okay, can he find success at the next level?
Another name that's popping in Bears camp right now is defensive end Austin Booker. He was drafted in the 5th round, 144th overall. I guarantee that our guest Dane Brugler isn't surprised at Austin Booker's performance because the grade on him, 3rd round, 78th overall. So the fact that the Bears are like, hey, wait a second, this guy's got a real interesting combination of athletic body traits and instincts, and he's really kind of maybe showing the top ranges of the forecast at this point.
And he's still just 21 years old. I think that was the intrigue with Booker is how young he was. He was a redshirt sophomore, had one career start to his name coming out of college. And so that lack of experience is, okay, you feel like it's an investment. He's not going to hit the ground running. Whatever he gives you as a rookie is great. But the early returns have been very promising. And that's great to see. His combine was a little weird. He showed up, he lost a lot of weight so he could run well at the combine, was down to 240 pounds, and he didn't run well. He ran a 4.79. And so it's like, okay, that's a little curious. He adds the weight back on, good weight. He was up to 253, so 13 pounds heavier at the pro day, and he actually runs faster. And so this is a guy that maybe didn't have some of the check the boxes that you want to see in the pre-draft process, but he has a lot of ability. He was just unrelenting as a pass rusher. And I think what you love most about him was how natural it was to create knockback with his hands. And it's not just strength and power, but it's an understanding of leverage points and how to get underneath blockers, create that knockback, and open up those rush opportunities for you. And so it seemed to come very natural for him. I don't know that he's ever going to be a double-digit sack player in the NFL, but he's going to be an NFL starter at some point. And so for the Bears to get him in the 5th round, you love that value, and it's been really fun to see him catch on pretty quickly.
Dane, we're going to talk with Rome Odunze in about an hour, and I'm fascinated by him because we usually talk about this in terms of quarterbacks, where top 10 quarterbacks are ordinarily not going into good situations because the team is picking in the top 10. And for Caleb Williams, that wasn't the case, and that's pretty cool. With Rome, I think it's even more interesting because a top 10 wide receiver you would think would end up being a team's focal point in the first couple years that they're on a roster. Rome falls into a situation where he's got Keenan Allen and he's got DJ Moore, and he kind of has to earn it if he's going to get playing time and opportunities to show what he can do.
And he was such a perfect fit. Like, I give Ryan Poles a lot of credit because since at the combine, I remember talking to a lot of Bears people and thinking like, okay, what do you need to do to trade up to 6 or 7 to make sure you get one of these receivers, probably Rome Odunze? Like, what do you need to do? And I was like, you just can't wait and see if he follows you at 9. Well, hey, Ryan Poles, he did, and he landed right in his lap. And I think part of that was I think they were comfortable with their options at 9. I know they did make some calls to trade up, but they didn't want to give up too much considering they didn't have a ton of draft capital. You didn't want to trade future picks, but it worked out so well. And he's going to an opportunity like, kind of like you set up, that he's not going to be expected to be the number 1 from day one, but he has that professional skill set already, the professional demeanor where he will be whatever the Bears need him to be. They want to work him out of the slot. He can do that. You want him to be the X on some of these plays. He can do that. He can win one-on-one on the outside. He has a savviness to him when it comes to route running. He's not the most sudden athlete, but he's very controlled. The body control is outstanding with him. The way he plays through contact is big time. So it's those pass catching instincts and that competitive focus that really stands out. And I think we've seen it the little I've seen of him in camp, it seems like he's getting more and more comfortable. And just with that connection, that chemistry that he's building with Caleb, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch throughout this season.